immediately. Like the first word.
I pressed the button though.
Okay. I need to go online and check the stream because I'm not sure if I pressed it.
It's pressed. It's pressed. We're good. We're good. We're online. We're live. Hope you're all doing well. And guess what, everyone? Welcome to TapCap Transmissions, the only Star Wars podcast that has a guest host once again. I am Corey, joined by Mr. Ilkin from Kings and Generals for another special episode. Ilkin, the illustrious ignoramus. I don't know.
I'm sorry for being late, guys. I recently had a kid, so now I can dedicate only like 50% of my time to Star Wars.
Yeah, that's Justin's excuse as well. Eck is away still. Hopefully, in the near future, he will be back in the land of the living, and we'll be able to continue on with our normally scheduled programming. Maybe with some guests still. Who knows? But this week and next week, Ilkin and I are going to be talking about the High Republic Phase 2, the adult novels. Not adult novels, but like adult novels from that phase. So this week we're talking about Convergence. Next week, because we're crazy and we want to read all 1,000 pages while also working on other stuff, we're going to be talking about Cataclysm. So these two happy little books right here. So this week, next week. So we're only a couple months behind on these actually, because these came out in April or May. But
Did they came at the same time?
I think the first one came out in April, and then it must be relatively soon after that the other one came out. It might be, I might have those backwards, but or not
So
backwards. But
November 20.
was it November?
Yeah.
Holy shit! Okay.
So yeah, you are wrong.
What does time even mean?
You are losing again,
Yeah.
Corey.
Oh well. Well, really, the Rise of the Red Blade came out 2 days ago, so we should really have been talking about that instead. But then you would have had to get it like 2 days ago, and it would have been a whole thing where you have to rush read the book because you read this well in advance. You were done a while ago, so right? You ready?
Yes, like 2 hours ago.
Yeah.
That's true. Listen, you can make fun of me, but at least I can read, and Ek can't read, so you are stuck with me for now.
Yes. Well, so this week, next week, High Republic Phase 2. Week after that, I'm going to be gone, but then the week after that, we'll be back for something that I haven't decided yet. I have some ideas, though. Yeah, so any Star Wars news that has come out in the last week, or I guess you weren't here since the Ahsoka trailer came out. We had Zach on last week. So is there any thoughts you had on the Ahsoka trailer that you wanted to share with the world?
Ahsoka trailers. I really liked it, but I have a feeling that they might play it a bit safe in some aspects. Like, I expect them not to push the story on the Mandalorian side much. So the first season of Ahsoka, I expect to be a bit more self-contained in terms of characters.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe the second season will start getting more interconnected stuff.
I don't know that much has to
I,
happen.
I guess I should rephrase that. I understand that in terms of larger Star Wars, it's more connected because it will have Rebels characters, it will have Mon Mothma, it will have etc. etc. But in terms of connection to the previous TV shows, Boba Fett and Mandalorian, it will be a bit more self-contained.
Yeah, like I think the Thrawn stuff is probably where most of those connections are going to come from, and that's presumably more for the movie. So I do think that Ahsoka is going to be more about like Ahsoka and then Balin, and any Mandalorian stuff is just going to be Sabine, who may or may not be Force sensitive. Who knows? But
Do you think they will try to kill off Balin?
I think Balin doesn't survive the season, and that's convenient for real life reasons if he ever is going to be like it just feels like he's the big bad for the season, and then he's out of the way, and like Shin gets redeemed or something, or Shin becomes the big bad later on. But because they're only doing the one season of Ahsoka, as far as we know, so they probably developed it as like a self-contained situation, or even if they do something else down the line, they probably planned it to have a self-contained story as far as at least one villain goes, or at least one storyline goes. So I don't think it's going to be a Moff Gideon situation where like Balin is the enemy of Ahsoka for now and forever until he dies in an explosion.
Oh, I think he might die in an explosion, but yeah.
Well, an explosion that's not in Ahsoka season one.
Do you agree that he is similar to yours Cabot character?
Yeah, Jorah Sabaoth. Yeah,
Yeah,
I think
Joe's Cabot.
he's kind of the newer one there, but like not a clone. And I guess since he's not here to speak for himself, Justin is theorizing that he was part of
Yeah.
some outbound flight similar project, and that's how he was away from the Jedi Order. Still got the megalomania of the original Jorah Sabaoth, which wasn't unique to the clone either. So I don't think that's a bad theory. I think
I liked
Justin,
how they called him Jedi supremacist, right?
yeah,
I think it's very apt. Again, I don't know if Balin will be a similar character in this regard.
yeah, he seems like he calls Anakin Anakin still, and all he had to say about Anakin that we've seen so far is that Anakin's powerful. So he's not got his priorities straight. I think is the best we can say about him.
I just hope that like him knowing Anakin is not connected to like time travel or something like that.
I don't think
Because
time travel is really
I,
yeah.
I just hope that the entire what's the name of the place?
World Between
Room of
Worlds.
yes. I hope that it doesn't come up much
It's gonna
or
come
at
up.
all.
Gonna come up.
Okay, because of Ezra.
Well, it was just so central to the end parts of Rebels, and it seems like when you're doing Force mysticism stuff in this show, it's probably going to connect there somehow.
I haven't watched like the very last episode of Rebels for some time. Uh, the when they're in the world between worlds, who else knows about it? I think Ahsoka knows about it.
Like who's been in it or who knows about it?
Who knows about it?
Everyone seems to know about it. Like Palpatine is trying to get in there. He's got his agents that are like seeking it out for him. All the Rebels crew are there trying to like keep Palpatine's people out. So
So it's not a
it's
situation where only Ahsoka knows about it. Okay, then it all will
yeah,
come out.
yeah.
Okay,
Like Ahsoka and Ezra have been in it, and they're the only ones who have really been in it. But it doesn't seem like it's a huge secret that it exists.
it just seems like such a big thing that no one using it afterwards seems like a I don't
Well,
know.
it had been like less common knowledge, but it was also no. So as far as Force users go, it's not like it's a thing that seemed to be like general common Jedi knowledge. But as far as the plot in Rebels goes, everyone in Rebels that was involved in anything major ended up knowing about it. So it may be like a secret to just that community, but it's not. It's not like a secret to just Ezra and Ahsoka.
Okay, then it will come out up, and I kind of hate it, but
Yeah.
hopefully they will be able to focus on other stuff.
Well, I
So
think with the World Between Worlds in Rebels, there were some pretty clear limitations on what you could do with it or what they were willing to do with it. So if it does come up and it's used for just wacky stuff all over the place, that's going to be more explicitly a bad thing to do. Kind of like what it was used for in Rebels, where like Ezra wanted to use it to save Kanan, and Ahsoka's like, no, you can't do that. We got to go. If Kanan doesn't die there, you do.
okay. Anyways, I don't want to turn this into like Ahsoka show.
Yeah.
You guys will probably discuss it ad nausea when it comes out.
Only a month away.
Yeah, I'm excited. I wonder how that will affect the Star Wars algorithm on YouTube.
Yeah, I'm
Do you think you
hoping.
guys will start
Well,
getting more views?
yeah, I think it'll probably be back to the same situation as when Bad Batch and Mando were on. Possibly an even bigger deal than Mando. Like I think it'll be more of like a Kenobi situation where it was like, or a Book of Boba Fett where it was like the start of something new, standalone, and like that was a really popular time for Star Wars YouTube, and I just missed it with some of the clip stuff. So I'm hoping for better things.
But what else happened this past week? I think something that will affect Star Wars, both TV shows and movies, the Hollywood writers' strike and
Mhm.
actors' strike. Obviously, like it probably is not a surprise to anyone that we are pro strike, right?
Yes.
But in terms of Star Wars, I assume that it might push stuff even further in the future.
Yeah, so we kind of talked about this before of like with just the prior strike when it was starting, or like the current, but like the first one started
The right
of
is right.
yeah, of what would get impacted. And it's gonna be a while before we really see anything that's impacted by it, but it will definitely cause a gap. And they might push back certain shows as a result to like space it out a bit more. Because there are a few things that are either completely done filming, completely done production entirely, that are going to be releasing over the next year and a half that I wouldn't expect to see them push back too much. Uh, but anything after that, like Mando season 4 kind of situation, that would be a lot, uh, a lot more likely to get impacted.
For instance, Ray movie, we probably will not see it. I think they were planning for
Yeah.
2025, right?
Yeah, the tentative release dates we saw for those movies are probably not going to get hit with anything that's going on right now.
And another news is the dismal numbers that Indiana Jones got,
I don't know
and
how dismal those numbers actually
they
were.
are very dismal.
I
Like
haven't
the
paying that
movie,
much attention to it.
so basically the movie's budget is at least 300 million,
Yeah. Well,
which
that's
makes
the
it.
thing. The comparison between like budget and movie performance, like this stuff can just scale infinitely is the problem I have with it.
Well, yes, it's basically one of top 10 most expensive movies ever.
Yeah.
Not even accounting for like marketing and stuff.
Yeah.
And by this point, I think it made like 300 million, and it should make like 700 to 800 million to be able to be in the black.
Yeah.
And it's not getting there at all. It will not get even to maybe 500. Maybe it will stop around 400, something like that. And obviously, our dear overlord, Bob Iger, said something to the tune of that we are making too many Marvel and Star Wars stuff.
Okay, so yeah, that article didn't actually. So I think part of that was getting conflated, where he was talking about Marvel shows and movies oversaturating, and he also mentioned stuff about Star Wars content in the article,
Yeah, I
but
think
that
I
got
shouldn't.
conflated
Yeah.
into being about Marvel and Star Wars stuff being made too much, which I don't think is what the text of the article actually says, and it was more the headlines that were conflating that. So, because like there hasn't been a Star Wars movie at all, so he wasn't talking about that clearly, and the shows have been less common than Marvel ones. So I don't think it like rules out the possibility that he's talking about scaling some of that back,
I just
but I
think
don't think
that
it's what he was saying
Indiana
exactly.
Jones failing and it being the as a Lucas product, I just feel like there might be some consternations there. But again, we'll see how it works out.
Yeah, I think the
I
biggest
just
thing is like overflowing budgets
yeah
more so than like what the actual popularity of the properties are. So we'll see though.
yeah, but it's like a answer, right? The Lord of the Rings shows comes out with 1 billion budget,
Yeah.
and then you can't exactly make a, let's say, you cast Leia, Han, and Luke. You can't exactly make a cheap show, right?
Right.
You should make something like huge from that. So that's basically what I'm thinking. That with the failure that was Indiana Jones in terms of finances, Star Wars might get some problems, but we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like any of the projects for Star Wars that have come out have been viewed that way by them yet. So I just it might just be an Indiana Jones specific issue where the popularity of that franchise is a bit more niche, but we'll see.
Yeah, I can see that.
The real problem is
And
that they didn't have Shia LaBeouf in it. Obviously, people would have come for Shia LaBeouf.
yeah, but one thing you were correct on, like you are correct with most things, but in this case, the budgets are getting bigger. And I remember that the first and the second, especially Indiana Jones movies, are very especially like low budget.
Hmm.
Like for what they were kind of low budget. and that was maybe part of the charm. I don't know, but putting more money in basically didn't help. Is my point.
Yeah. Yeah, like the audience can only scale so much beyond production, and when
Yeah,
people are watching these shows, they're judging, they don't know the context of budgets for the most part. They're judging like an episode of It's Always Sunny against an episode of Mandalorian. They're not
yeah,
really
good point.
looking at it as a different thing. And like It's Always Sunny is basically just three guys with a camcorder, like production value wise. But yeah, so we should
Just enjoy
probably
it, right?
get into our good friends here at the High Republic.
Yep.
Uh,
Can
so
I get the meta stuff out of the way
the
immediately?
meta stuff, sure.
Yeah. So something that I was annoyed about ever since I heard the news. So
News,
the story goes back.
right?
Like it's a
Should I maybe
prequel.
do the plot
Yeah, go
overview
ahead.
before
Sorry
we?
about that. Go ahead.
So so Convergence is basically about two planets in the same system that are in what they
Convergence.
call the Forever War. Think a little bit of Romeo and Juliet for the plot overall, except they're less star-crossed lovers than two of the heirs to these planets' monarchies that decide to work together alongside the Jedi to end the war between their people, despite the interference from people within each of their own camps and some external factors. So we'll go over each part by part afterwards, but Ilkin, if you want to continue with your throwback complaint.
So I am annoyed because I'm always annoyed. And this time I'm annoyed about the fact that they basically wrote a prequel to a book series that's not super popular. Like I enjoyed the first phase of High Republic. I did all of the adult books and all of the young adult books. And in terms of like Star Wars books, they were probably not S tier, but around A tier for me. And for me, it made sense to continue the story, but instead they decided to basically write prequels. And I have this bad feeling that they did that because they don't want to write something in the future that may somehow collide with Acolyte.
I I don't think that's the reason for it because like the phase 3 stuff is still going ahead at kind of the same pace. I think it's more just that they had other authors on board that they brought in for phase 2, and rather than have a bigger gap between like just doing the same story, if they jump back with other authors, they can tell some of the backstory while the rest of it moves ahead.
I still would prefer it if they moved ahead. Like the story of the High Republic is fun, but they basically I will discuss it, but basically the prequel explains stuff that is not super important to me, at least. Again, in terms of lore, it's very fun. It goes back 150 years
Yeah.
from the first High Republic book, uh, which means that we get more like holes filled in terms of the lore. But at the
Yeah.
same time, I have this problem with the High Republic in general: too many characters and
Mhm.
not enough screen time for the main ones.
Yeah.
Like if we are getting a prequel, I would prefer the prequel focused on some of the main characters of the first phase.
Yeah, but like we're getting it's not even that far away that phase 3 starts coming off, which is like following up directly on phase 1. So November 1st is the release date for the first adult novel in that. I think it's the first adult novel. It's George Mann's novel. Uh,
Hmm.
so we're getting the next stage in the story pretty quickly. And I think going back, we obviously haven't seen too much of it yet, but I think we're getting like the origins of the Nile. So I think that's interesting, seeing a bit more of the Republic forming into what it is in a Republic Phase One. It's not like super long before. I don't like time jumps in general, but I'm more okay with time jumps back than forward. Because back, you kind of always already know what the form of the galaxy is, so you're just filling in gaps. Whereas jumping forward is where you run into like the legacy issues, where a lot of the stakes in uh, so let's say that there had been novels between Crucible and the Legacy comics. it would have felt like a lot of those stakes were kind of gone. Whereas that's almost unavoidable when you're going backwards. Like there's not really a different way you can do that other than write like an immediate prequel each time, which is less interesting. So I don't really have a problem with it. I I thought I'd be less interested, but then once I started actually reading the book, I got over it pretty quickly.
No, the book is really good. That's the thing. The book on itself is really good.
Yeah,
But the context is a problem for me, like meta context. I again, there were so many main characters in the
right.
first phase, and kind of I understand that their story will continue, etc. But introducing even newer characters, it's a problem. Like in terms of Star Wars, like most people who read Star Wars now, they probably have some connection to the old legends, right?
I actually don't think that's
I
true.
assume. I assume. I'm just assuming right now. And if that's true, legends were kind of built on main characters, more or less.
Hmm.
Like there's maybe like 5 stories which doesn't have Luke in it.
Yeah.
There's like maybe 5 stories that doesn't have Han in it. So obviously they were movie characters, so it was easier to build around them. Uh, but I would hope that High Republic would continue on this trend and would have been more character focused instead of lore focused. I don't know if that's a correct way to put it.
Yeah, like I definitely see where you're coming from. Like there is a lot of name drops that happen
Yeah.
very quickly in all the books, and there's definitely more than a few perspective characters as well. Like one of the things in this book is that I felt like the uh so the two heirs in the story are Fantu and Siri, I think. Siri. I'm gonna call her
Serious.
Siri.
Serious.
But so Siri is like she gets a lot of the focus in the early parts of the book. But then after about the midpoint, you get maybe one or two perspective sections from her. To the point that I was starting to think like, oh, is she gonna like betray them in some way? And maybe that was intentional. But I did feel like her character suffered a bit from it because you had Enya, you had Fantu, you had uh,
Axel.
Axel, you had basically everyone getting some kind of perspective chapter, and that was one of the things like going between Light of the Jedi and the Rising Storm, and then Fallen Star was like, okay, I need to remember who these 60 people were, which could sometimes be difficult. So it can be easy to lose context for some of them when there's just so much going on.
That's true. I agree with that. And like if you talk about so it's Ziri, right? Her name.
Yeah.
So like in terms of future content, in terms of future books, she's a queen of a small planet and a basic uh backwards planet. We will probably not see her again. We might see her in the next story because of the events of this one. But in terms of global importance, in terms of galactic importance, she will not be important. So, despite the fact that I like her as a character, I feel like we will probably not get much time with her down the line too.
I kind of like that for this because we're getting some context for what's going on with the Jedi and almost using the planet as a case study for what the state of the galaxy is. Because like you're getting the chancellors there, and we're kind of using it to show what their different priorities are. So you're not setting up Arona and Irem, which are the two planets in the system, as like these pinnacles of galactic importance, the way that the like, Starlight Beacon was.
Huh?
But I feel like you're setting up enough that you can still tell other stories in this period, and you're not locking yourself into too much with it, because
Okay.
it is a. I think it like the weakness is that there are so many characters in the period that you need to be able to keep track of. But I think the strength is that the book does handle the characters really well. So I
Again,
enjoyed the
once again,
characters.
the book is very good. Like it's maybe A tier for me. The only thing that annoyed me from the get go was the fact that two planets have the name of the planet starts with the same letter.
Well, that's it is where Starlight Beacon is eventually. So if, like they're not gonna be like I don't think we're gonna get too much with that with the individual characters outside of Phase 2. Because, but they're kind of 150 years too early for that.
Yeah, that's true. Well, they mentioned Yoda, but apparently we are not allowed to see him in the adult books.
Yeah, he's always off doing something.
Yeah,
Did
he's basically
the I didn't do the other
the end of Hobbit.
two I didn't do the other two young adult novels or any of the comics. Does Yoda show up directly in any of them?
In the first phase, yes. In this, I'm not sure. I haven't read anything yet because I don't have time.
Well,
But I
we need to
assume
get
that
to them
Yoda
at
is
some point.
off doing something, you know,
Yeah,
which is
he's
not a which is not a problem. I understand that they're trying not to overwhelm the entire High Republic with Yoda, because if Yoda is there, he should be doing stuff.
yeah. Like he's gonna be
And
really powerful, and then like why is Yoda one of the things with having the original trilogy characters always be there is that like everyone around them ends up having to be either incompetent or just suck. And it's really easy to get the characters wrong. Like the book we read last week, me and Zach, is like a first person perspective book for Luke, and one of the biggest weaknesses of it was that the author
the best
wasn't
way to speak.
fantastic at writing
Yeah.
Luke. And I don't like
The
I
movie
feel
itself
like the strength
the
with
movie
these
itself is not bad, but like Luke he wasn't written like in a good way, I think.
yeah.
So
Like
yeah, that I do agree with.
I feel like Zoraida Cordova would have probably handled Luke better because of just how
Yeah.
strong she is with the characters in this book. But I still think you can more easily run into that. I kind of like having a wider array of characters that are able to do these different things. But that's just me.
No, I like characters who can do whatever. And in this case, like remember when we talked about the last book and I said something along the lines of like there's like three types of Jedi and that's it.
Yeah.
In High Republic we get much more archetypes, I guess, like
Mm.
in terms of character. We get more features, we get more characterization for the Jedi, especially in like Yuuzhan Vong War period and beyond that. There's like two type of Jedi.
Yeah. There's
The
the asshole
ones,
Jedi who side with Luke, who are basically
yes,
just Sith, and then there's
yeah,
the good guy Jedi who
yeah. So basically, the ones who side with the Republican authorities, whoever they are, and the ones who side with Force or whatever they say at that point.
yeah.
And in that term, High Republic is way better, like much better in handling characters and Jedi in particular. So I appreciate that. Yeah. Do you want to give like a summary of the story?
Yeah, we'll start going through part by part now, I think. I kind of did a very broad overview, but the book opens up in basically a battle in the war there. So we open up with the princess from Arono, Siri, and she is trying to I think they're trying to get in a shipment of water because their planet is basically so Arono is like dry desert. I don't know why anyone wants to live there kind of situation because they don't seem to have any resources left and their monarch is just an asshole. And then the other planet, Irem, has a bunch of water but no desert, and I guess that's what they're lacking. So they don't have many ships, but
I think
they
the
have
other planet
water.
doesn't have like metal and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
they put
Like
it up as like
mining stuff.
metal versus water resources.
Yeah.
And I think they probably just haven't looked hard enough for the metal, to be honest. There's usually metal somewhere, but maybe they've strip mined everything. But yeah, so there's the Path of the Open Hand is kind of like Nile Forerunners from Phase 1.
I
And
actually think that you are kind of running ahead. Like at the start, especially in this book, like I looked ahead in the second book, and yes, but in this book, it's more about at least what they
yeah, but
preface.
the mother has the gaze electric.
Yes,
So, and
that's
they're the chaos, the pad, like they're if I'm giving context for who they are, we don't know it yet
well, they are
until
saying
halfway
that
through the
they are
book.
against using the Force. They are not
Yeah,
saying that they are against
they're trying
Jedi.
to fuck with the Jedi being
Yeah,
claim they're saying that the Jedi claim to be the people who decide what goes on with the Force. The Jedi would say, no, we're not doing that. But the Path of the Open Hand is trying to.
And in terms of like their tactics, they're way more subtle than the Nile.
Yeah.
Like
It's more of
incredible.
a cult in the galaxy at this point rather
Yeah.
than a bunch of marauders flying around. So they're not like an open raiding group, but they're the seeds of the Nile are in there. But they want to disrupt everything going on with the Jedi on this system and stop any peace in the system for reasons. And so they cause a bit of an international incident. There's been a
The galactic,
well, it's only in one galaxy, intragalactic maybe.
intergalactic. Okay.
Intergalactic would be two galaxies. We
Okay,
don't have that
galactic
yet.
scale.
Yeah.
Don't shame me because I don't know anything. Go ahead.
But uh there's a ceasefire that's existed for like 3 days between the two planets, and so when they're escorting in this water shipment, there's like some jamming going on and some hijacking of one of the fighters. Fighter starts to crash into Irem. Chief of or Chancellor Malo's ship comes in and nearly collides with stuff for some reason, and then the princess from Arono ends up trying to save the pilot that is crashing into Irem, and she crashes into the ocean. She gets saved by Fan2, the heir from the other planet, and this leads to uh, more anger from the monarch of Arono, thinking that she's been kidnapped when really she would have been free to go. So now everyone needs to try to stop a reignition of the forever war between these two planets, which has really only been about 20 years. So they're really overstating how bad the forever war could be.
Yeah,
So what
they
did you
do.
think of the initial introduction to some of these characters? Because we do get a lot thrown at us. We have Abda, I think is her name, from the Path of the Open Hand. Then we have
Mhm.
Stella and we have Ziri, all in this little section that we get.
So basically, the initial incident happens because the Chancellor's ship and the Jedi vessel end up in the same coordinates
Yeah.
on the exit from the hyperspace, which is very interesting to me. And as you said, the author kind of leaves breadcrumbs all over the place in terms of who done it. And initially, I had this feeling that there are two chancellors of the republic, and I felt that one of them, the Moloch, Moloch,
Molo. Just
Molo,
Molo.
he's working against the Greylark.
Greylark? Yeah.
Yeah. Uh,
Yongu? Kongyu?
yeah, yeah,
Yongu.
but that's not true. Basically, there's no real. There are some ideological differences between two chancellors, but the Molo is not trying to actively like destroy the other chancellor. Still, it's a really interesting coincidence that two vessels end in the same place. Basically, three vessels, right? The Ice Hollow too.
Well, that's the water rations or ice that are
Yeah.
coming in. The Jedi are coming in, and then Molo
So
comes in.
I assume that we will continue talking about hyperspace lanes in High Republic books. Like we talked in the first phase, they will remain very important to the story.
Yeah, because we're out near Bespin, like we're pretty far out in the outer Rim, and so yeah, hyperspace tech isn't quite as good as it will be in the prequel times even, and yeah, so it's not shocking to anyone that uh this could happen, but it's not clear to them why it has. So there are a bunch of places where this book goes like close to cliches with all of this, with like the overall plot. You think you're getting like your Romeo and Juliet story kind of situation. You think you're getting like a bunch of the high fantasy tropes, but it subverts them in just enough ways
Yeah.
and fleshes them out in just enough ways that it's not like it manages to elevate itself above what you might expect just from a summary of what's going on.
So at some point, despite the fact that the monarch of I'll never remember the name of his planet.
Arona.
Monarch of Eleanor, despite the fact that he thinks that his daughter is kidnapped, in reality, his daughter is a guest of the Queen of Iram, and that kicks off the peace negotiations headed by by the Chancellor and by the Jedi, and that's where we learn that the Minister of Ironor is for the continuation of the war,
Yeah.
and he becomes one of these breadcrumbs for us to think that whatever is happening because he is conspiring behind the scene.
Yeah. And a lot of them are conspiring behind the scenes, but they're also conspiring behind the scenes for different reasons than
Yeah, they
what's
have their
like
own
actually
reasons,
the
but
prime
they're
mover
not a
here.
big bad, basically.
Yeah.
That's my point.
Yeah. So there's just enough people with like competing interests that it's not a clear like this is side A, this is side B, and then you're either on one or the other. There's enough like interplay between a lot of what's going on that that you can kind of theorize throughout the book of like what you think is happening, and it's still fun to do that. And I especially so something that happens throughout the book a lot is that there will be setup for interpersonal conflict, and I'd kind of put this back to the book that Zach and I read last week with the uh, where Leia is questioning the loyalty of uh, Natari, and then Luke is questioning the loyalty of Drusil, and then every like you kind of know as the reader that like this isn't going to go anywhere. It's probably never going to come up again, and it doesn't, so it was pointless to include it. Whereas in here, there were moments where it was like clear to the reader that someone who might be suspected of something is not actually responsible for it, and all we're going to be setting up for by saying maybe they are
But
is
internally, it makes sense, you
no,
know.
but no, I'm kind of I'm saying it goes against that because you get that setup where you like might go in thinking like, oh, we're about to get some pointless interpersonal drama that'll be resolved in like 30 pages of nonsense, but they just don't even go that direction.
Yeah,
Where
my point is more like from the outside, you may think that this might be like not going anywhere, right? But inside, like from the character's point of view, what they are seeing, what they know, the information that they have, it's a much more interesting story. Basically, that's my point.
yeah, and like I'm probably wording this poorly, but like what I'm saying is that it doesn't go into the pointless drama that everyone knows is going to resolve in a way because there's some like misunderstanding rather than like an actual disagreement or an actual reason to suspect something. Where like with the prior book, it was just like you're just throwing this stuff in to kind of add some level of intrigue that's unnecessary. With this, the they avoid having any unnecessary intrigue so that they can focus on the actual character conflicts, which I think works much better.
Yes, the conflicts work really well. That I agree 100%.
And like there's way less effort to hold the hands of the reader on what the character's thoughts or motivations might be, where usually in Star Wars books especially, they try to be like very clear of like this person interprets this person's reaction this way, that means that person feels that way. Whereas in this, uh, there's around page 85, you have an interaction between Fantu and the Queen, his
Mhm.
mother, and you're getting it from Fantu's perspective, and Fantu is uh, kind of interpreting his conversation with his mother one way, and we're seeing how he's reacting to his mother's reactions. And those reactions are used more to tell us about Fantu than they are to tell us about the mother, because we're seeing how he's interpreting what she's saying. With still, the book is clear that like maybe he's right, maybe he's wrong, but the important thing here is this is how Fantu is feeling about it.
Yeah. S- Again, without kind of comparing with the story you guys read previous week, but here the characters are more, I guess, people are not like I don't know, story devices.
Yeah. The thing I'm mostly trying to avoid directly saying is it was really nice to read this after the last two books we read.
Yes. I'm kind of thankful that I read this one and not the one before.
Yeah.
What was the name of that book? Insult of Luke, something like that.
Yes. That's the one. Hairline of the Jedi.
Yeah. So here's story. The Jedi and the Chancellor organize negotiation summit, something like that, and the two heirs of the planets, Fantu and Ziri, they decide that they will marry in order to create long-lasting peace.
Yeah, so there was basically legend. So the planets had been united before, and that had happened with a marriage between the two houses, or between the two planets. And so Siri decides that the best way to achieve peace is that she is going to propose marriage between her and Fantu, and then there would be nothing that anyone else in their families can say. They won't be able to fight each other because they'll be co-monarchs over both planets, like in their kind of golden age. And they do get some pushback uh, from their families initially. Eventually, they manage to win them over, but the monarch is kind of the most unreasonable acting one in the first half of the
Grumpy
book.
one.
The monarch from Arono, and
Yeah.
yeah, he's like, I got big Denethor vibes from him. Like I was just picturing Denethor the whole time.
His one son dies, and etc. etc.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's good.
she's Ciri is basically Faramir, and if Faramir married Aragorn, I guess I don't know where the analogy
I like your
quite comes
style.
from there.
That's nice.
But I don't know if Fantu is like really an Aragorn. He's more of a Sam.
Uh, that's a good question. I'm currently in the process of deciding which character I'm going to play in Baldur's Gate 3.
Hmm. You're gonna play a Sam.
So no, like everyone plays Aragorn basically. So I'm trying to find some other angle, but that's not neither here nor there. Back to the book. We decided that they're going to get married, and that's where we see the person called Axel Greylark for the first time.
Yeah,
We
that's
go
when
to
he gets
Coruscant.
there. We've had a few chapters with him when
Right
he's
there,
like
there.
gambling around and being just a general little quirky guy in the rest of the galaxy. He's the son of Chancellor Greylark, and he's
Just
a career
use the
criminal.
name. He's a fail son. Just say that.
That's not a term that I'm familiar with.
Really? Fail son? That's like my most popular name that I use for myself. So fail son. I love that. So that's when he arrives to the system, and he's a son of the chancellor, and he is sent here to help negotiate, which doesn't make sense to me because like we don't even hear that he has great diplomatic skills. But regardless, he wants to get it done. Initially it looks like he wants to get it done in order to get his inheritance back, but at the same time, we learn that he has a chip on his shoulder and he hates the Jedi for some reason.
Yeah, so he's basically sent by his mom to be her representative because Chancellor Marlowe's at these summits. She doesn't Chancellor Greylark's not there, and Marlowe hadn't really checked in with Greylark before doing this, which is a big breach in protocol for them. They're co-chancellors, but they're supposed to like not try to outshine each other. And
Basically, Mola is outside Chancellor and Greylark is inside Chancellor.
yeah,
That's
Marlowe is the frontier minister. Greylark is the minister of the interior, basically. So they have
yeah.
this shared goal that we hear about. But for most of the initial part of the book, you're getting a lot of conflict that they're kind of implying between the two. And like Greylark's upset that Marlowe went there without clearing it with her, so she sends Axel as kind of her eyes and ears to report back on what's going on. And we do get the kind of context that Axel is kind of living the life he is, and he's upset at his mom because of his dad's death, but he wants his inheritance, and if he does this for his mom, she's gonna say, "Okay, you can have your money, and then you can screw off." But he does a lot of gambling until then, and he comes in the middle of a murder investigation because there had been some deaths on the summit grounds in the
Mhm.
Paxian, which is
And
the
that
ship
way,
returned
I
from
thought
Malo.
that the story will go for the full whodunit.
Yeah,
But as you say, we get some subversion of it.
yeah,
We still learn who done it, but the story is not about it. That's my
yeah.
point.
Like my fear going into these chapters was that because of how like Sagaru was found, who's like one of the chief commanders in the Arono
The way he's
army.
found dead, it's really like one of these Knives Out books, basically.
Yeah,
Movies, sorry, Knives Out movies. So he's found in a bedroom of another character,
yeah.
which means that there should be investigation, and we don't get an investigation. Instead, we get the story goes in its own direction, and at some point, we learn what happened.
Yeah, like they're still like kind of in the background investigating. They get the wrong conclusion from it. But my fear with him being in Fan Two's room was that the characters would be like it would be used as a way to set up conflict between Siri and Fan 2. And that's like what I was talking about before, where like the obvious thing for the story to do would be to set up some tension between the two because of this. And I would have found that really annoying because it was clear that Fan 2 didn't do this, so it'd just be like a waste of time trying to get through that for the characters. And the story just didn't do that. And I'm very happy the story didn't do
Yeah,
that.
that's correct. Like
Uh,
when we were just starting the book, I had this worry that it will be a bit by the committee. You know how
right.
uh, I think in the second wave of the first phase, we started feeling like too many people worked on this book.
Mhm.
Maybe not like writing it, but in terms of like giving advices, giving like directions, etc. In this one, I think we get like a very clear voice of this author, which is nice for Star Wars. A good book, a unique voice. It's always nice.
Yeah, like I think with Fallen Star, just because there was so much that it was trying to wrap up for the
Yeah.
phase, that you end up with like so many perspective characters wrapping up so many storylines from different people's work that you end up with
When
like a
someone
bit.
creates a character, they kind of chime in on what the character thinks
Yeah,
and says, etc., etc.
it,
So it's
it
a bit by committee.
it's kind of an extension of the problem of like having to remember too many characters, in that you have to like now wrap up some of the stories of too many characters, and then you end up not knowing what happened to Buryaga, and we have to pretend that Jonas Sutomo's character in the Acolyte isn't Buryaga, even though like clearly gonna be Buryaga. They just couldn't
The
say
Wookiees
that
live
until
long, right?
what?
The Wookiees live long, right? They are one of the
Yeah,
longest
yeah, they
living.
live hundreds of years.
Yeah, okay, that's good.
It could be him, and they could just be lying about it not being him. But I do think that's also like the benefit to this book is part of not being uh, tied in too much to a bunch of other major characters that you have to feel like, and new characters you have to have their storylines, plus the established characters have to have a storyline. And like here, we're able to just kind of focus on our four principles. And while you do get a few other perspective chapters, it's not quite the same as if we had to have any new character we want to introduce, but also like Obi-Wan and Anakin's storyline. But from the summit, the kids have agreed they're going to get married. We kind of knew that Fan Two had a crush on Siri for the whole time. Siri has less clear feelings for Fan Two, where it's less clear to Fan Two, especially of whether she's doing this
Yeah.
just because she wants to help her family, or rather help her planet, or if she's got any interest in him romantically beyond that. But they start planning their wedding. They go down to Arono, and we kind of get their pre-honeymoon period where the two of them are on a little barge with Axel and Stella, and they're. Am I getting that name wrong? Gela,
Stella?
Stella. Sorry, Gela.
Stella.
I don't know why I started thinking Stella. I would think I started thinking of Stellan, and now that overwrote Gela's name.
There
But
is a characters. what's her name? I'm so stupid right now.
Enya?
No. In the prologue,
Abda.
no, Serena.
Right. Okay, yeah. Serena and Abda, the
That's
partners
why
of
you are
Abda.
confusing the two.
Yeah.
Serena and Abda are part of that secretive group called Path of the Hand. Open Hand?
Yeah.
Okay, that sounds masturbatory, but yeah.
That's the one I thought sounded like just a domestic violence strategy.
Well, I have two jokes, like sex jokes and racist jokes. I don't have white
Okay.
baiting jokes.
I'll keep it that way. I don't know.
So yeah, where were we? It's
Yeah.
a really complicated book. Like when before we started, I was standing in the rain and was waiting, and I was thinking like, if you ask me to summarize it, will I be able to summarize in 5 minutes? And I can. There's so much going on, and
Yeah.
like most of it actually is really difficult to skip.
Yeah. Like that's one of the difficult parts with the podcast as well, is like trying to give
Yeah.
enough context for what's going on that people don't like absolutely need to read the books. We also don't want to just like sit here and say this happened and this happened and this happened and like have the podcast be a bad substitute for an audiobook.
Mhm.
But we do have the tour of Verono. On this tour, Gela and Axel are their bodyguards, and we start shifting the story a bit more to their perspective instead of focusing quite as much on Fantu and Siri. We really don't get that much from Siri's perspective until a little bit at the end. Uh, but
But
the
I agree with your vibes that at the beginning, especially, it feels like she wants this as a way to ensure that the peace will happen.
Mhm.
So it's a bit like a merge of
Convenience, political
yeah,
dynasties.
yes. At the end, obviously, it's a bit different. We'll get there,
Yeah,
and at this point, we start getting a bit more of a self-contained story of the two heirs and what's her name, the Jedi,
Gela.
Gela,
Yeah.
and Axel.
Yes.
So they end up. Uh, can you remind me? They were researching something.
They were researching something.
They were looking for something in the desert.
Well, they were kind of just doing their tour and trying to draw out whoever was going to try to kill them, which turns out to be the Ferals.
Everyone.
Well, everyone, but also particularly the Viceroy's family. So there are a few towns that are still very opposed to this happening at all. They think that Ciri's been like either replaced, she's an imposter, or she's been somehow like mind controlled by the Irami to like surrender the planet to them. So no
And
one's
the
really looking for
planets are really racist against each other. That
yeah,
should be
they
mentioned. Like
yeah.
it's they are super racist. They have even like slurs for each other, which make no sense. But yeah,
Yeah. Well, there's also a lot of like off-world aliens that end up living there too. There's like a Mon Calamari person on Arona, which I thought was a weird choice, but then they explained it and it was like, okay, no, I understand why you made this choice now, and it was deliberate rather than like species roulette. Uh, like there were so many points in this book where it's like, oh, are you going somewhere that I don't like with this? And then it turned out, no, you actually have done this for a reason that makes a lot of sense. That was like almost any time I thought I was starting to have a gripe with it, that happened. So I can't overstate how much that made me happy, especially after
yeah,
some
I
recent
agree.
reading.
I read most of it like over the last 2 days, and I was so happy. The beginning was a bit slow, I think, but the middle and the end are really dynamic and really like so
Yeah.
much happens.
Yeah. So there's so much focus on like the importance of the symbolism to them, but also not hanging on to it too much, like pulling the positives of their past and their symbolism without like being beholden to the past when it's destructive, which I think is a good message for them to have. So like the kind of looking to the past for how they got united before without falling prey to the same kind of thing that's keeping the Ferals or whatever fighting, like the Viceroy wanting to continue the war of like, we've sacrificed our people for this. They're evil. They're the enemy. They always need to be the enemy. And instead, just kind of looking for cooperation. Uh, but they,
Speaking of speaking of living in the past, Axel Greylark.
yes, he's
So
a very upset, broken man.
he hates the Jedi because when he was on a diplomatic mission with his father got killed, and the Jedi didn't try to help, basically, or failed to help.
Yeah,
Let's say.
so we kind of get it's a lot like the stuff with the Martez sisters in the Clone
Yeah.
Wars and Luminara, where it's like the Jedi are getting disconnected from the rest of the galaxy, and like something horrible happens to someone. It's like, hey, bro, that's just the Force. See you later, and coming across like they don't care because they, in on some level, don't, and they're just giving these to what everyone else would sound like platitudes, no matter how much they believe them, or even if they're like true in how the Force works. For people who don't have access to the Force, it's meaningless. It's the Jedi thoughts and prayers, basically, being
Yeah.
told to people who are non-religious. Where and so Axel kind of sees Jedi as being that detached, and he kind of gets that detached himself, and he blames the Jedi for everything that happened to his father. But then
Did you
he,
catch the Easter egg there?
sorry,
Did you catch the Easter egg?
I don't know.
So Axel's father dies on a planet called Melida Dawn.
I did not.
Okay, so there are old books. They were published before Episode One. I think they're called Jedi Apprentice, and they're about Obi-Wan's training with Qui-Gon.
Right, and his Obi-Wan's long-lasting relationship with Siri Tachi.
Yeah, but basically one of the missions, like the books are super short, and one of the missions is on the same planet on
Yeah.
Meridian, where the war is never stops, etc., etc. So it's like a interesting Easter egg to the legends.
A similar situation.
Yeah.
I forgot that one. I read so the my teacher in grade 6, 7, 8. I had the same class all 3 years in a row because it was a mixed 6, 7, 8 class, and uh, that was when I started getting into Star Wars. It was around the time that Episode 3 was out, so it was like I think grade 7 or 8 was Episode 3 coming out for me, and I my
How old are
teacher.
you?
I'm 31.
Okay, I'm so much older. Yeah.
Yes. But my teacher had like a library in his classroom that had uh the Jedi Apprentice and Jedi Quest books, I think. So I read most of them and a lot of the Animorphs books through that. And I
Okay.
think that would have been close to being my first Star Wars books. And I accidentally stole one of them where I'd like taken it home to read them, which we were allowed to do. You sign them out. And like 5 years later, I was like cleaning some old books out of my closet and found that book. And I was like, oh,
Sir, do you have any shame?
I was actually very ashamed of it. I'm ashamed of it talking about it right now.
I
I've
think
thought
you're
about talking to that teacher and seeing if he ever wants to come on the podcast because I think he still watches Star Wars stuff. I haven't talked to him in a long time, but
that might be fun actually. Learning like the how the older generation sees the Star Wars as it's right now. Like you can ask so many questions about like current books, current movies, current TV shows, etc.,
yeah.
etc. That might be fun. A
So
good podcast.
shout out to Mr. B if you wanna come on the podcast.
I will return your book. Just come to the podcast.
Oh, it's gone. Book's gone. Yeah. So we we end that part with some kidnapping going on, where the viceroy's son has taken a town hostage. Essentially, they've dressed up as Arami soldiers, and they kind of lure in Siri and Fan 2, in exchange for keeping the people safe, and then Axel and Gela have to go in and rescue them. So the parties split up for about a page because when they jump out of the ship after rescuing Fantu and Siri, there's only 3 parachutes. Everyone but Gela gets one. Gela has to fall and not die, which is something that has been set up throughout the book as something that she's actually okay with. She likes falling, doesn't like flying, and it's something that we see later with like Bel Zettifar. The training for him is like fall but don't die about it when he's with Loden. So this is
Yeah.
a common theme in the High Republic that pays off a few times. But the uh, while the party is split up, Axel gets into some trouble that we don't hear about for a while, where he murders someone, which is not very epic.
Murdering or murdering that person?
Murdering that person, but murdering in general is also not very epic. Because he
Okay.
gets like hailed as a hero by the guy's family. He's carrying this body of someone that the family thought had like died running off to call for help. Instead, he'd walked up on Axel calling the mother, not his mother, even though I was like, wait, is his mother the mother of the children of the. But
Yeah, actually, this is a very interesting thing. Again, I was worried that they will go for that, and they didn't.
yeah.
Uh, I was thinking that they will like use the idea that his mother is a chancellor and he's talking to the mother, and they will somehow create a confusion for the characters that okay, he was talking to his mother, so it's okay.
No,
But
like I what I thought was like, are they trying to set up that like is this a Sidious Palpatine situation for another Chancellor, which would have been a little bit overdone,
yeah,
but I thought it was like it was a possibility until you like you'd have to kind of think about how he was addressing her to be 100% sure that's not what's going on because Greylark had been fairly cagey, the
yeah,
mother had been, and turns out that's not what's going on. But
thankfully.
it was a little bit of a misdirect that I think was good to do.
Yeah, like we don't get much from the Chancellor Greylark until the end of the book. We basically like, oh, she's sending her son away, etc., etc. So she's a bit like I wouldn't say like a she's bad or something like that, but she seems cold. She seems like distant, etc., etc.
Yeah, and it ends up being kind of understandable why,
Yeah,
because her son's a complete dick that joined a cult, her husband's dead, and not many great things going on in her life. But we do get some nice tender moments between her and Malo, so they're not as antagonistic towards each other as was initially set up. They do understand the mission they're trying to do together, which we don't really know exactly what the mission is. I don't know if there's a clear mission or if it's just a mission vibes they have going on for the Republic. But
did you feel like using the word High Republic for this period is a bit weird? Like it seems at this point the Republic controls only like core and around core.
uh I don't think it's that weird. Like it's like early High Republic, but it's like the Republic
Okay.
at its height of not like power, but when it's like the beacon of hope for galactic humanity, culminating
Okay.
in Starlight Beacon and then culminating in Starlight Beacon not being Starlight Beacon anymore. But
Sad.
very sad. So one of these planets is gonna get killed. So I mean their palace could end up being the base of Starlight Beacon. Is there like a beam from the sort of like they have a moon between the two planets, and once they're married, they're like, oh, where are we gonna end up living? I think it's pretty clear they're gonna end up living on the moon. Like that seems like the
That's
obvious choice.
that's more romantic, basically. Yeah.
Yeah. So the final part of the book is basically the wedding happening and them everyone in the story trying to stop anything from interfering with the wedding because there's Axel who ends up trying to blow up the shield surrounding the Irem capital, which happens and is not very epic for anyone there. There's a weapons factory with like chemical weapons that uh, that Bantu's mom is keeping from him, and then Siri and Fantu even get on board with like keeping
Question
some
for you. I
weapons.
kind of missed that. What was the significance of the poison that was created in that facility?
So the it was meant to be used like the way the Arami wanted to use it was as an injectable poison, and that's what the Queen wanted. Was they developed
Like,
this injectable poison.
why can't this be developed anywhere else? What is the significance?
Well, it's the scorpion venom from
Oh,
the scorpions from Irem. So they want to have that because they can't build ships, so they want to engage in like poisoning some of the higher ranking people or even some other parts of the military. And the queen is convinced by or forced by the or just makes a deal with the path of the open hand to turn into an aerosolized thing. So that's what the crash ship on Arono was for with the Irem soldiers is they were sent there to distribute this aerosolized version of the poison and kill a bunch of people. And the Path of the Open Hand wants it, presumably for some anti Jedi activities. Uh, the Queen had ordered it all destroyed except for some samples. Fan 2 wanted it all destroyed. Axel ended up wanting it all destroyed because he was kind of going against the Path of the Open Hand. But then he decides not to go against them. But there's a whole bunch of messy stuff happens. It turns into a manhunt for Axel. There's bounty hunters out for a
huge one.
gambling debt from the start of the book, and they all attack the wedding because he leaves his tracker in the wedding, and we end up with nobody dying, which I was kind of surprised by. It was like, oh, there's so many opportunities here for Fan 2 and Siri to die. There's a bunch of opportunities for Chancellor Greylark to die. It seems like maybe Malo was going to die. Someone was going to die, and then no one died. But Axel goes to
Only,
prison.
only the chancellor, no, not chancellor. Sorry, the what's his face? Main minister of Iram.
Of Irem or Arono?
Oh no, sorry.
The Viceroy?
Yeah, I think he dies. No.
Well, uh, he's not important,
Yeah, he's
but
not
I don't
important.
even remember if he.
So that's how you decide who dies, who doesn't die. Not important does should die, right? Okay, I see it.
Well, Rev is still alive, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and the older Viceroy is dead. He gets killed by Axel. He's the one that gets stabbed by Axel.
But the main significance of this book in terms of lore is the fact that we meet the path of the open hand, and I assume that they will be the main villains in this phase, at least. And I think we both agree that they will turn into Nile, or maybe
Yeah, I mean
they
they're
will.
building the Gaze Electric. Like, does Axel turn into like is Axel's secret identity gonna be Martian Rose granddad or something?
I think so, actually, or
So
maybe not. Like they are entire different species, the royal family, right?
the Martian Rose
Yeah,
and the Greylarks?
because the Gurlocs are human. The Martial law is, I don't remember the
Is
name of
he?
the Everin,
But
Everin.
isn't that just a like a human
No, I
world
think
with?
it's
Okay, no,
not
they're
human.
vampire people. Okay,
Yeah, they're
I
basically
thought they were
vampire
just
people.
another name for like your Kuwati or something.
No, no,
But
no,
that
they're
was
not human. Like the whole Martian wears a mask. We don't know his race, etc. I
yeah,
don't think we learn about it until the end of the last adult book in the series in the first phase. So his race, I think maybe they didn't decide initially, maybe something else, but it was like whole thing, him wearing a mask.
right.
So and they're building Gaze Electric, and right now they were interested in using the conflict in Ireland and Erono to bring disrepute to the reputation of the Jedi. I don't think at this point we get any explanation on why they hate the Jedi.
Yeah, we don't know the reasons behind their motivations. We just know that they They think the Jedi are limiting to the Force in some way, or limiting access to the Force in some way.
And the book ends with discussion on where the planet should sign the peace treaty,
Yeah.
and everybody decides that it will happen on Jeddah. And Jeddah is important because from the start of the book, Gela kind of talks about going there in order to learn more about the Force. And it basically has the tie into Rogue One, because we learn that there are many different Force cults on Jeddah which learn the Force and worship it, etc., etc. So,
Yeah, while
uh,
not being a strictly Republic planet or Jedi
yeah,
planet or anyone else.
so they will go to Jeddah to sign the peace, and I'm guessing that that's where the path of the open hand will play its cards, I guess.
Yeah. So that will come to the fore in Cataclysm as well. So
Yeah,
next week, that's what we're going to be doing. Tonight, we're going to be doing some Empire at War, I believe, with me, Elkin, and Charlie, unless Elkin leaves. I don't know. Are you playing Empire at War?
I'm only playing Worms.
We'll talk. But before we go, thank you so much for joining me. Do you have a rating you would like to give the book?
Oh my god. Can you open the page again?
I can.
'Cause I want some kind of baseline again.
I'll
I have
have
no
to.
opinions. I have only baselines.
I open things here.
Show me. Put it on screen.
There's a well, you can click in the description. There's a link in the description to the book ratings that we've done before.
Oh,
The TapCaf tier list.
I see it. I see it. I see it. I see it. I'm just trying to see what I gave the last High Republic books that we read. What was it? Midnight Express? Midnight something? No?
Midnight Horizon. I'm pretty sure we did. What's it called? When was it?
High Republic first phase.
Well, that would have been a while ago.
Yep. Oh my god. They have
I
so
think it might
much
have been
stuff.
Into the Dark. I don't think it was. I don't think I've read
I think
Midnight
it was
Horizon.
Into the Dark, yeah. Was it Into the Dark, or was it Out of the Shadows? I think it was Out of the Shadows, actually.
I don't know if we. Yeah, I don't think we've done Out of the Shadows.
I can't find either one.
Well,
So
Into the Dark is definitely on here, and I think we only
okay,
did the one young adult book for phase one,
Into the Dark.
and that
Ooh,
was
I've
3
seen
for
it.
me and Justin. Me and Justin
Okay.
gave Into the Dark a C.
Okay. So I can easily give this one B. I can maybe do B plus, but yeah, B
Yeah, and
plus.
I think last when you were on for Scourge, I think we each gave Scourge a C.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so you're gonna give Convergence a B.
Yeah.
Right. I
I
am
don't know.
actually gonna give Convergence an A.
Nice. Because as you said, like it starts out slow, but surprisingly, it ends well.
Yeah.
It sets up a bunch of stuff for the sequel. I think I read at the end of the wiki something about the fact that two authors kind of tried to coordinate this one and the next one, but that makes sense because this is one phase, right?
Yeah.
Uh, so B is a bit low, maybe, but B plus is my rating. A is your rating, and I
Yes.
really like it. I hope that the next one is as good as this one, because I really don't have much focus right now, and I need all the
Yeah.
goodness that I can get.
Yeah. Like I with the last two, like I kind of said in those episodes, so I might be colored a little bit by recency and what I've done recently, but
Hmm.
I was kind of struggling to get through those two, and with this one, I was like, there wasn't really ever a point where I just wanted to put it down and go do something else. And anytime that I thought that I was starting to question where it was going, I ended up it ended up resolving any of my concerns and being much better than I expected.
So
So
this one didn't make you think about your life choices.
no, this
Okay,
this
that's good.
one solidly good. I don't think it's like quite as good as some of my all-time favorites, but really enjoyed it. Really looking forward to Cataclysm, even though it is 40 pages longer. Like I'm gonna have a very busy week because it's my last week to get a bunch of shit done before I'm gone for 10 days. But even with that, I'm still really looking forward to the 380 pages of reading or whatever that we're gonna have to do.
We can delay it if you don't have time. We
No,
can delay it.
I'm good. I can do it.
Okay, good. So next week we'll be here with Cataclysm.
Yep. Same bat
Not
time, same bat channel.
exactly.
Thank you for listening, everyone. Thank you for watching, and hope to see you next time. We'll be on twitch.tv/Corey Loses, as well as youtube.com/ECKSTOO for some gaming tonight.